Well, with us right now is Kevin Lynn. He is with Hoag as a radiation oncologist. Nice to meet you, sir.
Great to meet you, too.
And with the Hoag Family Cancer Institute. Great to have you here today. And today you're going to be, since obviously this is your specialty, you're going to be talking about radiation therapy. I know there's all different types now that is used today, right? Different ways and that you go about using this and pinpointing a cancer compared to maybe years ago, right?
Absolutely. Technology is always changing and evolving, and the idea behind radiation is, of course, to cure the cancers, but our other goal is, of course, to minimize the side effects to the normal tissue. So
right.
We're always looking for newer and better techniques to be able to do that.
So how does radiation exactly treat cancer?
So on its most basic molecular level, what radiation does is radiation will damage the DNA of cells. And a lot of people will ask me, well, how does it damage just the DNA of the cancer cells,
right,
not necessarily the normal cells? Well, as a function of the fact that cancer cells are trying to divide and rapidly grow, their DNA is clumped together. And as a result of that, they'll sustain more damage from radiation. Also, our normal cells are very good at repairing DNA. In fact, they do so millions of times a day for many other reasons. Our bodies have evolved to be able to repair DNA. Cancer cells don't repair DNA very well. In fact, we think that's one of the reasons they became cancerous in the first place. So the radiation works by damaging the DNA. The cancer cells sustain more damage, and they're not able to repair that damage, and so those cancer cells will die off.
Okay, so it's interesting that you said that could be how they became cancerous in the first place. They were defective cells.
So over time, unfortunately, we're bombarded with a lot of different things that will damage our DNA. There's cosmic rays, there's radon in the air, and that's one of the reasons also as people get older, unfortunately, the chance of cancer is going up. But in terms of what kind of deformities or what kind of abnormalities cancer cells develop, oftentimes it's not a one event, it's not a single hit, but more so it can be multiple events. And one of the events can be an impairment in the DNA repair process that allows for more DNA damage to go through the system.
Okay. And then those defective cells start to take over other cells? Is that they're trying to get healthy, basically, or they're trying to conquer? Or?
So the basic tenet of cancer is not so much they're taking over the cells, but they're just rapidly dividing. And so our cells have a normal checkpoint mechanism where when they reach a certain point, they don't necessarily keep growing, they'll stop.
Okay.
But cancer cells have lost that, such that they'll just keep growing and growing. And it doesn't necessarily matter what they're growing into, they'll grow into other organs, into other areas. And that's what makes for the difficulty of cancer.
Okay, so as far as radiation therapy, as far as the treatment, how long does it take, and you need several months for that, or short treatments?
So a traditional course of radiation will typically take about 5 to 9 weeks, Monday through Friday, 5 days a week. Each daily treatment is typically fairly short, in the range of 10 to 15-minute appointments. But as we've evolved with radiation therapy, we're also looking at different ways that radiation can be done. Some of the newer techniques are also looking to try and shorten those treatment courses. Obviously, coming into a radiation department for 5 to 9 weeks ends up being quite burdensome for a lot of patients, especially as the cancer incidence in more elderly patients grow. That transportation getting to and from a radiation facility becomes harder and harder. And so there are different regimens where we're trying to shorten that course, still trying to get the same efficacy, but minimize the impact on patients' lives.
Okay. And how does, as far as the actual treatment goes, can you pinpoint things better than you used to be, so other cells aren't as damaged by the radiation itself?
Absolutely. So those are definitely areas where we're constantly evolving, constantly getting better. So there are different ways that we can improve the targeting of radiation. For instance, one is to be able to improve our target delineation. So a patient who has cancer is typically diagnosed by a biopsy, but they also will typically go through various imaging modalities, and certain cancers may show up better on an MRI, certain ones may show up better on a PET scan or a CT scan. And what we have is we have technology that allows us to put all of those imaging modalities together to be able to delineate exactly what is the target, where do we want to treat, where do we want that dose to go,
Okay.
and what are some of the normal structures that we want to avoid. The technology, that software, also allows us to take those imaging modalities that may not have been exactly in the same position. So for instance, when patients get their MRIs or their CTs, their PETs, they may be in a slightly different position than the position they're getting treated in for radiation. And the technology will allow us to deform those images to be able to accurately delineate our targets. Secondarily, in terms of being able to focus the dose, our technology, our treatment machines, all of those things are getting better and better in terms of treatment dose delivery accuracy. So we're better able to spare the normal organs. So once we delineate the target in that first step, we're now better able to shape that dose, minimize the dose to the normal surrounding tissues, but still getting a full dose to the target itself. And the third thing is that on a daily basis, for instance, when we're looking at a tumor inside the body, it's not always readily visible from the outside. And so in radiation, we use a lot of techniques to try and set the patients up accurately on a daily basis. But internal organ movement can be an issue. And so some of the newer technologies that we use are also to be able to track that internal motion. So for instance, if the patient comes in on any given day and we expect the tumor to be in a certain location, we can take a scan and see exactly where does the machine, where is the technology expect that tumor to be, where is that tumor actually on any given day. And if it's not exactly in the right spot, we can actually move the patient such that the tumor ends up in exactly the target location, allowing us to spare the normal tissue, give full dose to the tumor.
So it can move a little bit.
So for instance, a great example would be something like a prostate. And if we're looking to treat the prostate, within the body, unfortunately, the prostate can move a little bit depending on the patient's rectal filling or bladder filling. Just from day to day, there can be slight variations. They're not tremendous, but when we're talking about trying to focus that dose right on the target, subtle movements can make a difference. The way we accounted for that in older techniques was that you just treat a bigger area. You treat enough of a margin such that you don't have to worry about missing. But of course, then you're also treating more normal tissue. And so with modern techniques, we're really trying to focus that dose on the target. And it would be problematic if we focus the dose on the target, but the target's not exactly where we expect it to be. And so that's where the image guidance prior to every daily radiation allows us to really make sure that we're treating the right areas.
What are some of the side effects?
Side effects with radiation are limited to the area of treatment. And so a lot of times people will ask me, for instance, will I lose my hair? And the answer typically is no, unless we're treating the scalp, treating the hair areas. So depending on what type of area that the patient is treated, radiation will affect that area and affect the organs in that area, but won't necessarily affect other areas. That's one of the good and bad things about radiation, which are that the radiation is very localized, it's focused, and so the side effects tend to be limited to that area. But unfortunately, the efficacy is also limited to that area. And so there are situations where we think the cancer is more widespread in various areas. In those cases, then radiation may not be the best option. Typically, then we'll look for a treatment that can go throughout the body, something like chemotherapy. But if we have reason to believe that the cancer is in a specific area, or if there's a specific area that's causing the patient's symptoms, then radiation can be very effective in that local area, minimizing the side effects to other areas because of the way we can focus it. But so is that efficacy limited to that specific area.
Now, overall, with the Hoag, the Cancer Institute that you folks have, you guys have been doing this for a long time, and why should someone choose to go to Hoag for this versus other therapy centers?
So Hoag, the Hoag Cancer Institute actually does a great job of being able to bridge the gap between community practice and academic medicine. And so oftentimes people want to be able to feel like they're not just a research number, they're not coming into a big institution. At the Hoag Cancer Centers, patients drive right up to the door, they walk in, and they're being able to come into the cancer center get their treatments. There's no big parking structure or any sort of big institution feel where
Right.
people sometimes feel depersonalized. At the same time, we still want to be able to offer that cutting edge treatments. And so with Hoag's partnership with USC, we are still able to offer, for instance, research trials as necessary. We also have the infrastructure of a big academic institution. So for instance, as patients go through treatments, we have support services like nutritional support, dietitians,
Okay.
speech language pathologists, nurse navigators that help the patients get through this difficult time. It's not always, oftentimes it's not an easy process, and patients get overwhelmed, and treatments sometimes are not easy also. And so in a traditional community facility, you might not have all of those support services that can help make the journey easier. But in an academic institution, you may not get that personal feel of patients being taken care of as a person, not as a number. And so the Hoag Institute, Hoag Family Cancer Institute, works to bridge that gap and provide the patients the best of both sides.
All right, very good. Doctor, pleasure meeting you.
Great to meet you too.
And if people want more information, you can call 949-7-CANCER. That's 949-722-6237 for the Hoag Family Cancer Institute. Good to meet you. Thank you for the information. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, we'll be right back.